Ever notice how, like, the most brilliant solutions often come from understanding the really simple stuff really well?
Yeah,
For
totally.
someone like you who's already, thinking way ahead of the curve, going back to basics isn't about learning the ABCs. It's more like appreciating the elegance of how those basic building blocks fit together
Yeah.
and seeing how that can unlock some pretty unexpected insights.
Right, right. Like you can apply those principles in all sorts of situations, even ones that seem really complex at first.
Exactly. It's like looking under the hood of a super high-tech machine and realizing, oh, it's all just these simple gears and levers working together in this ingenious way.
That's a great analogy. And
Yeah.
and that's exactly what we're going to do in this deep dive today. We're going deep into the principles of effective teaching.
Taking a look at specifically The First Days of School by Harry K. Wong.
Now, Harry and Rosemary Wong, they've been in the trenches. They've got decades of actual classroom experience.
So this isn't just some ivory tower theory, it's battle-tested stuff. But here's the thing. Even though it's about teaching, the stuff they talk about, setting clear expectations, creating the right environment, that kind of thing, that applies to way more than just classrooms.
Absolutely. Think about leading a team, mentoring someone, even just trying to get yourself organized. These principles are everywhere.
Our mission here is to pull out those core principles from the Wong's work. And for someone like you who can really synthesize ideas, I think you'll see how these seemingly basic concepts can actually give you a huge advantage when you're guiding and influencing others.
No doubt. You know, the Wongs, they hit hard on this idea that the very beginning of anything, especially when you're leading people, is like super critical for how things turn out in the end.
It's like building a house, right? If the foundation's wonky, the whole thing's going to be off.
Exactly. And in their world, those first few days of school, they're not just about getting settled in. They're like the make or break time for setting the tone for the whole year.
The Wongs say the best teachers, right from the start, they focus on getting their classroom management procedures down pat.
But it's not about being like a drill sergeant, you know? It's about creating this predictable, consistent environment. And that's actually where real learning can happen.
It's like setting up the rules of the game so everyone can focus on actually playing instead of arguing about what's allowed.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing, they emphasize every single lesson, every routine, it's all got to be designed to get those kids actually learning the stuff they're supposed to learn. There's like a straight line from day one to the end goal.
So how does that translate outside of a classroom?
Well, think about, say, you're starting a new project with the team.
Hmm.
Or you're bringing someone new onto the team. If you make those processes, those expectations, those goals crystal clear from the get-go, it's like laying down that solid foundation. And that makes the whole project, the whole team, way more efficient and focused.
Right. No wasted time figuring stuff out later on. And speaking of setting people up for success, the Wongs are huge on the power of positive expectations.
Yeah, they really hammer home the point that if you, as a leader, truly believe in the people you're guiding, that belief actually has a measurable impact on how they perform. Like, there's real research backing this up.
It's that whole Pygmalion effect, right?
Yeah.
People tend to rise to the level of expectation you set for them.
Exactly. It's not just about being nice or hoping for the best. It's like you're creating this atmosphere where people feel supported and capable, and that actually helps them do better.
Because the opposite is also true, isn't it? Like, imagine a teacher who starts the year saying, look, most of you are going to fail. This stuff's really hard. That just kills any motivation anyone might have had.
Totally. It's like you're instantly putting a limit on what they think they can achieve. The Wongs, they point to all this research that shows people tend to perform according to the expectations they're given, whether they realize it or not.
So for you, listening to this, it might be worth thinking about, how do your own beliefs about the people you work with, the people you mentor, how do those beliefs maybe shape how they actually end up performing?
It's something we all do, you know. We all have these assumptions about others, and those assumptions, they actually have power. Now, taking that a step further, the Wongs talk about this thing called invitational education. Basically, it's all about creating an environment where people feel welcome and included.
They describe 4 levels of this, ranging from like accidentally making people feel unwelcome to deliberately making them feel invited. And obviously we want to focus on that last one. So what makes someone intentionally inviting?
Well, according to the book, people who are intentionally inviting, they're always professional, they're super diligent, and they're just genuinely warm in how they interact with others. They go out of their way to make sure people feel valued and respected and capable.
And I remember they told this great story about Cindy Wong
Hmm.
and how she got tons of parents to come to back to school night. What did she do?
Right. She had her students make these like personalized invitations for their parents. They even added little handwritten notes and origami
Oh,
figures.
that's cute.
Yeah, and it totally worked. The parents felt like they were really wanted there and they were excited to come. It created this whole sense of connection and anticipation.
See, that's a perfect example of how when you make people feel truly welcome, they're way more likely to get involved and be invested in whatever you're doing.
100%. And speaking of small things that make a big difference, the Wongs are big on using people's names and just being plain courteous.
Yeah, you'd think that stuff would be obvious, but you'd be surprised how many people forget the basics.
Yeah.
So why is using someone's name so important?
Well, the Wongs say that when you address someone by their name, it's like you're acknowledging their individual identity, It shows respect. And on the flip side, if you mess up someone's name or you forget it, it can make them feel kind of like invisible.
And what about saying please? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just a word, right? But what's the big deal?
Well, according to the book, please shows that you respect the other person's autonomy. Like you're not ordering them around, you're asking them to do something. And especially in situations where people maybe feel like they don't have a lot of control, that one little word can really change the whole dynamic.
And then there's thank you.
Yeah.
That goes beyond just being polite, doesn't
Oh,
it?
yeah. When you say thank you, you're acknowledging the effort someone put in. You're showing appreciation, and it reinforces those positive behaviors. They even suggest saying thank you and then the person's name to make it even more impactful.
And what about smiling?
Ah, the smile. It's like this universal signal of warmth and approachability. It instantly creates a more positive connection. In the book, they give this example of a student, Nathan, who's acting up. And the teacher redirects him using this whole sequence. His name, please, the specific instructions, thank you, and then a smile. It's firm but respectful.
So even for someone like you, who's already at the top of their game, these basic things, using names, saying please and thank you, smiling, they matter. Because at the end of the day, so much of what we do comes down to basic human connection.
Couldn't agree more. And on a related note, the Wongs also talk about how important it is for leaders to be prepared and organized. Like in a classroom, that means having all the materials ready, having the room set up in a way that supports learning, and just being mentally ready to lead.
So when they say the work needs to be ready, what do they mean by that?
Well, in a classroom, it means making sure that when the students come in, everything they need, their books, handouts, assignments, it's all there and accessible. It sends the message that learning can start right away. No delays.
And what about the room being ready? That refers to the physical space, right?
Exactly. It's about making sure the classroom is set up in a way that makes sense for learning. It's got to be functional and inviting. The book even gives tips on how to arrange the desks so everyone can see and interact easily.
And then there's the teacher being ready. That's more than just having your lesson plans done.
Oh, yeah. It's about having a positive mindset, being proactive, and, really importantly, embodying those positive expectations we talked about earlier. Truly believing that the students can succeed. The Wongs, they say that when a teacher is ready in all these ways, it sets a really strong tone for the whole class.
It projects confidence and
Yeah.
confidence. Right. Like, okay, this person knows what they're doing. We're in good hands. They even say that being ready is one of the biggest indicators of whether a teacher will be effective or not.
Which makes a ton of sense. Now, once you've got that prepared environment, the next thing the Wongs emphasize is the need for clear procedures and routines. And they're careful to distinguish between rules and procedures.
Right. They say rules are often about what you can't do, and sometimes they even encourage people to break them. But procedures, those are the specific steps you take to do something the right way. It's like teaching people how to do things instead of just telling them what not to do.
A great example is, think about all the different procedures there are in a classroom. How to enter and leave the room, how to turn in assignments, how to get help when you need it, how to move around the classroom, the whole dismissal routine. These might seem like small things, but they add up to create this really smooth, efficient environment.
And there's that great story in the book about the substitute teacher. What happened there?
Oh, yeah. The teacher comes back after being out, and it turns out the substitute wasn't even there for the beginning of class. But the students, they just did everything themselves. They took attendance, they got started on their work, all because the procedures were so clearly established. It was like a well-oiled machine.
So for you, listening to this, think about your own work. What are the procedures that make things run smoothly for you and your team? Are they clearly laid out? Are they consistently followed? It's all about creating that same level of predictability and efficiency.
Exactly. Now, at the end of the day, the whole point of teaching is for the students to actually learn something, right? So the Wongs, they spend a lot of time talking about how to create assignments that actually promote learning.
They say a lot of assignments miss the mark because they're too focused on the task itself, like read this chapter or answer these questions. But a good assignment, it spells out exactly what the student should be able to do or understand or master after they've done it. It's about the learning outcome, not just the task.
And they actually have a four-step process for creating these kinds of assignments. Do you want to run through those steps quickly?
Sure. Step one is figure out exactly what you want the students to get out of the assignment. Step two is write that goal down in a single sentence. Step three is give that sentence to the students. And step four is make that goal visible, either by posting it in the classroom or including it in the written instructions. It's all about making the goal super clear.
They use this great analogy of ordering a wedding cake. You have to tell the baker exactly what you want: the type of cake, the product, the delivery date, the time, and the delivery location, the place. That level of clarity makes sure everyone's on the same page.
And to make things even more specific, the Wongs align their thinking with Bloom's taxonomy, which is this framework that categorizes different levels of thinking. So when you're designing an assignment, you have to decide. Do you want students just to remember basic facts? Or do you want them to analyze information, solve problems, create something new? The verbs you use in the assignment should reflect the level of thinking you want to see.
Right. It's all about being intentional. What kind of thinking are you trying to encourage? And again, for you listening, think about how you communicate tasks and goals in your own work. Are you spelling out those desired outcomes? Or are you just giving people a list of things to do?
It's a subtle but really important difference. Now, once you set these clear learning objectives, how do you know if the students are actually learning? That's where assessment and feedback come in.
The Wongs, they're big on making sure that any assessment you do is directly tied to those learning objectives we just talked about. It's not just about giving grades. It's about gathering information that tells you how the student is progressing and whether your teaching is actually working.
And they talk about two main types of assessments, right?
Yep, formative and summative. Formative assessments are like these ongoing check-ins throughout the learning process. They give you a chance to provide feedback and make adjustments along the way. Summative assessments, those are more like the final exams. They happen at the end of a unit to see how much the student has mastered.
The book also talks about using scoring guides or rubrics. What are those and why are they helpful?
Scoring guides are like these detailed criteria for evaluating student work. They spell out exactly what a good performance looks like for each part of the assignment. They're like a roadmap to success. They give an example of a science teacher, Karen Rogers, who uses rubrics to grade lab reports. It helps break down a complex task into smaller, more manageable pieces.
So even for someone like you who's already operating at a really high level, understanding how to assess and provide feedback effectively is crucial. Whether you're learning something new yourself or you're guiding others, being clear about what success looks like is super important.
For sure. And, one of the things the Wongs emphasize is that good teachers, they're always learning and growing themselves, and they do that by collaborating with each other.
They're big on teamwork. Why is that so important for teachers?
Well, it creates this culture of shared expertise. Teachers can learn from each other's successes and failures, and they can refine their teaching practices together. They talk about this team learning log where teachers can analyze different teaching strategies and look at student work together to see what's working and what's not. It's like a data-driven approach to getting better.
And they also talk about curriculum maps. What are those?
Yeah. Curriculum maps are basically these overviews of what's being taught at different grade levels or in different subject areas. They help teachers see the big picture, make sure the curriculum is aligned, and avoid unnecessary repetition. It's all about creating a cohesive learning experience for the students.
So for someone outside of education, how does that collaboration idea apply?
Well, think about any field where people are working together towards a common goal. Regularly checking in with your colleagues, reviewing outcomes, discussing strategies, sharing best practices, those things can lead to huge improvements in any industry.
Now, the book also makes this interesting distinction between teacher workers and teacher leaders. What's the difference?
Teacher workers are more reactive. They just focus on getting their tasks done. Teacher leaders, on the other hand, they're proactive. They're really invested in their students' success, and they embody those positive expectations we talked about earlier. They take ownership and are always looking for ways to improve.
And they make this subtle but interesting point about the difference between deciding and choosing. Can you explain that?
Yeah, they say that deciding sometimes has this negative feeling too, like you're just eliminating options because you have to. But choosing, that implies that you're actively and consciously taking responsibility for a particular course of action. They use the example of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat on the bus. That was a powerful choice that led to real change.
So for you listening, think about your own approach to leadership. Are you just deciding on things because you have to? Or are you actively choosing your path and owning the outcomes?
It's a powerful distinction. And finally, the Wongs, they're big on consistency. They say it's absolutely essential for creating effective systems and environments.
Why is predictability so important?
Because when people know what to expect, they feel safe and secure. When the routines are clear, when the expectations are clear, when the consequences are clear, people can relax and focus on what they're supposed to be doing. They don't have to waste energy worrying about what's coming next. They give this example of a principal, Lee Douglas, who created an amazing learning environment at her school by establishing really clear and consistent routines and expectations for everyone. It allowed everyone to operate with more clarity and focus.
And for you, listening to this, that principle of consistency applies to building any kind of system, in any field. Predictable processes, clear expectations, consistent communication. Those things build trust and make everything run more smoothly.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So just to sum up all the key takeaways we've covered today, we talked about how crucial those first interactions are, how powerful positive expectations can be, how important it is to create welcoming and inclusive environments, how seemingly small things like using people's names and being courteous can make a big difference. We talked about the importance of being prepared and organized, establishing clear procedures and routines, focusing on learning outcomes when you create assignments, understanding how to assess and provide effective feedback. We talked about the power of collaboration and continuous improvement, the mindset of a leader who chooses their path, and the stabilizing force of consistency.
And while we've been talking about teaching, all of these principles, clear communication, effective guidance, fostering success, those things apply everywhere. Even if you're already a super smart, high-achieving person, these foundational elements are what make it possible to achieve great things, both for yourself and the people you work with.
So here's a final thought to chew on. Take one or two of these seemingly basic concepts we've discussed. How could you apply them more intentionally in your own life, in your own work? Sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from going back to the basics and really mastering them.
It's so true. Sometimes we get so caught up in looking for complex solutions that we forget the power of the simple stuff. But if you really take the time to understand and apply these core principles, even if you're already at the top of your game, you might be surprised at the results you get.
So that's our deep dive into the world of effective teaching and how its principles can be applied far beyond the classroom. We'll see you on our next deep dive.
See you then. Bye.